Let's kick off with a big what if. What if Germany, the economic engine of Europe, just stopped growing? It sounds like a simple question, but we're about to dive into a thought experiment that has some incredibly real consequences.
Okay, so when you think of Germany, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's pure economic muscle, right? I mean, it's the industrial heart of the entire continent, a total giant when it comes to manufacturing and exports. On paper, everything looks fantastic, a real picture of success. But if you're actually living there, or you talk to people on the ground, you start to hear a totally different story. Finding a place to live, it can be a nightmare. And the infrastructure, the trains, the roads, all the public services, they all feel like they're groaning under this immense pressure. And on top of all that, there's this feeling, this sense that just pushing forward, that growing is getting harder and harder every single year. It's a huge paradox, isn't it? This incredibly powerful economy that feels, well, strained. And that leads us to a question that honestly, most people just aren't asking. So here it is. What if Germany had just hit pause on population growth? Like zero growth. Would that have been the magic bullet? Would it have fixed the housing crisis and taken the pressure off the infrastructure? Or would it have opened up a whole new can of worms, maybe even bigger problems? That's exactly what we're going to break down right now.
All right, so let's get into it. And just a quick note before we really dive in. This isn't about politics or taking sides. Nope, this is all about the economics of it, the real-world trade-offs. It's about understanding that every choice has consequences.
When you boil it all down, an economy really only has two levers it can pull to grow. First, you can get more out of the people you already have. That's all about being more productive, more innovative. Or, lever number two, you can just add more people to the mix. More workers, more consumers, more taxpayers. Germany actually tried to do both. But what if they had only focused on that first one? Okay, to really get why Germany made the choice it did, we have to look under the hood. We've got to look at the numbers, at the demographic engine that was supposed to be powering the whole country, or in this case, the engine that was sputtering. And the reality is, well, it's pretty stark. For decades now, Germany has been facing this double whammy, a society that's getting older and birth rates that are super low. This created a huge demographic problem, and the best way to understand it is with a concept called the dependency ratio. So this chart right here really shows you the pressure cooker. The dependency ratio is basically a measure of how many non-working people, think retirees and kids, have to be supported by every single person who is working. And as that pool of workers gets smaller compared to everyone else, each worker has to shoulder a much heavier financial load. You can imagine the kind of strain this puts on pensions, on healthcare, on the whole system. And look at this. This chart shows you exactly what was at stake. Without population growth, Germany's workforce wasn't just going to level off. No, it was projected to shrink a lot. And fewer workers means, well, it means fewer people to run the factories, to come up with new ideas, and crucially, to pay the taxes that keep the lights on.
So this is really the key takeaway from this first part. For Germany, population growth wasn't just some vanity project about getting bigger. It was a survival strategy. It was a defense mechanism to stop the economy from slowly but surely shrinking into oblivion.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's flip the script. What if Germany had gone for that zero-growth world? What would life actually look and feel like? Because on the surface, I gotta say, the picture it paints is pretty calm, pretty appealing, actually. Just think about it for a second. With a stable population, the insane pressure on housing would ease up. Rents probably wouldn't be skyrocketing all the time. Your commute might actually be bearable with less crowded trains and less traffic. For some jobs, less competition might even mean your wages feel a bit more secure. It's a nice picture, right? And that right there is the twist. That feeling of calm, that stability, it can be a little bit of an illusion. Because just beneath that calm surface, a totally different kind of pressure is building. And this is where we need to talk about the hidden price tag.
So what is the real price of all that calm? Well, in a world with zero growth, the bills don't just disappear into thin air. Instead, they get piled onto a smaller and smaller group of people.
Let's just tick through the consequences here. Fewer workers, that means the country as a whole produces less stuff, lower national output. Fewer taxpayers, that means the people who are still working have to pay higher taxes to cover the bills. And speaking of bills, the costs for healthcare and pensions for an older society, they don't shrink, they explode. And finally, with fewer young people bringing fresh ideas, innovation itself can start to stall out. And this right here is the absolute core of the argument. You see, the total cost of running the country doesn't shrink nearly as fast as the number of people who are there to pay for it. All those costs get focused, concentrated, creating this incredible burden on whoever is left in the workforce.
Exactly. It doesn't go away. The weight of it all just shifts. Instead of being spread out over a big growing population, it gets dumped squarely onto the shoulders of a smaller, shrinking one. It shifts from new people coming in to the next generation already there. The problem isn't solved. It just gets passed down the line.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. What about automation? Can't robots just do the work? And look, productivity gains from technology are absolutely critical. But automation isn't some magic wand you can just wave. It's a really slow, incredibly expensive process. We're talking decades. And guess what? You still need highly skilled people to design, build, and maintain all those robots.
And this leads to maybe the most important point of all. You can automate how things are made, but you can't automate demand. You can't automate people wanting to buy things. Robots don't buy cars, they don't rent apartments or go out for a nice meal. An economy needs customers to survive. And at the end of the day, people are the only customers we've got.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. Germany's decision to grow its population wasn't some random thing that just happened. It was a deliberate, strategic choice. It was a calculated bet made because they were staring some pretty harsh realities in the face in a world that, let's be honest, never stops moving.
Think about Germany's whole economic model. It's built on selling stuff to the rest of the world. To do that, you need massive scale. Their legendary industrial machine, it needs a constant supply of workers to keep it running. And that pension system? It's a pay-as-you-go system, which means it literally falls apart without new people paying in to support the retirees. And all the while, the global competition is just relentless. It never lets up.
This right here really gets to the heart of the dilemma. In today's interconnected world, standing still is basically the same as falling behind. If all your competitors are growing and you're not, you're getting smaller by comparison. You start to lose your influence, you lose market share, and pretty soon you lose control over your own future.
So in the end, a Germany with zero population growth might have felt a bit calmer, a bit more comfortable in the short run. But that comfort would have come with a steep price. Less economic power, way more pressure on the people working, and fewer options as time went on. See, every big economic choice solves one problem, but it almost always creates another. The real question, the one we're left with, is never if there's a cost. The question is always who pays it.